Welcome, everybody. We are ready to get rolling with the webinar today, 5 Keys to Overcoming the Labor Shortage. So I'm doing this program in partnership with one of our other coaches and leaders here at Grandy and Associates, Patrick Chapman. How are you doing today, buddy?
My friend, I'm doing great. Hope you are. Hope everybody who's tuning in is having a marvelous day, and we sure hope we can make it even better by them taking time to join us here.
Absolutely. So we're going to take a little bit of time, and Patrick and I are going to kind of work back and forth a little bit as we kind of walk through the topic today. And it's one that's, man, if nothing else, it's a major frustration, that we run into every day, right? It's not only our company, your company, it's really companies all over U.S. and Canada. So it's really not something that anybody can escape really to any degree. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right in. Got a couple of quick housekeeping items that I want to hit as we go through this. So we're going to be covering the material, and with the webinar, you don't have the opportunity to verbally ask us questions, but if you've got some questions for us down in the Zoom toolbar, you've got the Q&A session. Go ahead and click on that, and you can enter questions in there. And as we have time and as we have the opportunity to go through, we'll try and cover those within our time that we have available to us today. Use the Q&A session, not the chat box. Really, the chat box would only be reserved for some technical issues, things like that we've got going on in the background. But otherwise, the Q&A window is the one that Patrick and I will be monitoring a little bit, trying to do that. If you're attending on our live stream, you can attempt to put in a question in the comment box. As we have time, we'll take a peek at it. But again, we're going to focus on the Q&A side as well. So, or for the most part, as we go through this. So with that, let's kind of jump right into our content. So for those who don't know me, again, my name is Bill Kennard. With Grandy and Associates. Again, been associated with or owning Grandy and Associates for going on 15, 16 years at this point now. And I get the pleasure of working with contractors just like yourself throughout the U.S. and Canada every single day. My background, of course, started out on the HVAC side and has since moved into many of the other trades along the way. Who the heck are you, Patrick?
That's the $24,000 question. Similar background, over 20 years, worked in the trades industries, primarily HVAC. Served about half that time on the local dealer side, everything from sales, service, install, job inspections, and various administrative roles. Then I switched over to the distribution side of the aisle, territory manager, serving contractors who are doing residential and commercial. But with Grandy, last month was my 4-year anniversary. And again, just delighted to be here with everybody today.
Well, excellent. Again, just gives us a little bit of idea who we are talking to you. And again, we are working really in all trades across the board, and represented here in the session, we've got all trades in here as well. So really today, let's jump right in because we've got a whole bunch of stuff to cover in our short period of time together. Again, 5 keys to overcoming the labor shortage. One of the things that we run into all the time as we work with contractors, and really for the last several years, but certainly over the last year and a half, has been this issue of, look, the single biggest problem I have is where do I find people? It's so hard to find people, and not only find people, but find good people. Right. And that's an incredible challenge. And let me just expound a little bit more on some of this challenge that we have here, because it's something that really is impacting the entire country. Right. When we look at it, according to a study that was done by the Association of General Contractors, 72% believe that the labor shortage basically would be their biggest hurdle this year. Well, no kidding. Right. We're already living that. Really for the upcoming year. But to take that a little bit farther, I mean, that's general contractors, but it affects all trades. It's not just the generals. 89% of all trades contractors believe that they are currently having trouble finding skilled workers. Now, we look at this piece of the puzzle, and before the pandemic, there was already a major shortage in people. I mean, you look at it, and I went through and did a search. There is something like 1.7 million contractors throughout the U.S. and Canada. And so you start to look at those, and that's just the major trades, right? I mean, I looked at plumbing, heating, electrical, landscape, pool and spa. are the ones that I looked at. And so you start looking at that, and many of us are all competing for that same employee, that same team member, right? We wanted to come to work for us. And so this, is part of our pain. And then on top of that, right, you deal with this. Right, not too far down the street from us, right? We've got a sign that's again, I can go flip burgers, right, for $18 an hour. Right now, again, part of that is, do I want to do that? No, but that also puts more pressure on us, in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it, and how do we attract people and coming in. Now, let's take this a little bit farther, right, and look at this piece of the puzzle. And we kind of move around here a little bit, but sure, Strategic Human Resource Management, one of the largest HR associations in the country, did a study, and there was some fascinating information that came out of this thing that really shines a light, certainly on some of the problems, and maybe points a little bit in the direction of some of the solutions. Right. And I wanted to share some of the results with you, and forgive me standing in front of my contents here a little bit. There was too much to throw on one screen. So they surveyed people who were unemployed, right? Because the question is, look, there's so many people who are still looking for work. Why aren't they, filled in jobs? Because everybody is hiring, right? And they basically were surveying. They did a survey just this a couple of months ago, and said, okay, what are the top reasons for remaining unemployed? And I thought this was interesting. Now, they could pick multiple answers, so these don't, it adds up to more than 100%. But 42% of the people said they're not receiving responses for jobs in which they've applied for. And I thought, seriously? And right about the time I was putting this together and reading this, my nephew, who is living with my wife and I at this point in time, is applying for jobs and applied for at a trades company for a position that they had listed. And they made just an immediate, hey, got your, just want to acknowledge we received your information. And that was the last thing he heard from them. And they're looking, right? They're actively looking for people, right? Any more than qualified for what they were hiring, right? But again, just not getting back. 32%, a fear of being exposed to COVID-19. Again, in our world, we are in the customer's homes all the time. That's a bit of an issue. 29% said they were offered to go back to work, but they were offered less than their previous job. And I'll stay home if that's the case. 17% of those individuals said that they're preparing for a career shift. They're looking at doing something a little bit different. And that one is interesting. We'll talk about that one here in just a little bit. 11% said that $300 extra unemployment they received made it possible for them to be more selective in terms of what job they went back to. Right now, and then 9% simply said they were earning more on unemployment than they could simply go back to work, and that for us is so frustrating, right? And that part of it, and so that creates a part of the problem, right? So that's one part of that pool. Now, when we look at other elements of that, why not take the jobs that are available? We're going, look, everybody's hiring. How can you not have a job? Well, there were two things. And this was that other piece that, when I came back and said, the issue that was here, considering a career shift, here's where that plays a part. Those individuals that left jobs voluntarily, they're absolutely willing to consider doing something different, right? They'll take another job, different career, get into a different path, learn something new. They're good with it. Those people who were laid off, most of them are not likely to consider a career change. Right. Look, this is what I do. I was not looking to change. I want to go back to that. Right. And so they're far more firm, and they won't take on new skills. They won't they're not really looking to learn a new career. So that's one of those issues that certainly falls in there. Along with that, this skills gap. We talked about the skills gap long before the pandemic. Well, if anything, the skills gap just got a little bit more, right? And so we'll come back to that when Patrick's going to cover that slide here in a little bit and talk about that. Now, when we look at that, the study also then went back and talked to individual employers. And talking to employers, the question, was really, okay, what are you doing to fill these critical roles within your company? 57% of them were offering referral bonuses. Sign-on bonuses and referral bonuses. So in other words, talking to my existing team members, you give me a referral, we'll give you a bonus for that. 55% saying they were hiring external or temporary workers. Well, again, a little bit more of a challenge for some of us, right? That really doesn't fit within what we're doing, right? Some of the trades can get away with that. right? But a little bit more technical ones, it's pretty difficult to hire a temp and who knows really nothing and, send them out to fix a furnace. It doesn't really work. Right. Along with that, 44% are upskilling or reskilling their current staff. We're going to talk about that one a little bit. And 43% have no choice but to boost pay. We're having to pay more, right? And you guys are seeing that in your hiring climate right now. Now, some of the other issues that are here is that the current issues that are affecting this. Right. Today, really, there's more skilled jobs available than before the pandemic hit in 2020. There's more jobs that we need to fill now than there were before, right? And then you put on top of it all of that political stuff that starts to create some mud and some clouds and things like that in there, right? The unemployment benefits and all the rest of that, it doesn't help. It only makes that problem worse. So, that's the problem, right? We know what the problem is. Patrick, what's the solution?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's multi-layered. And like Bill had mentioned, we're going to look at 5 keys today. One of which is really, it's one of those things that's so obvious. Sometimes it can be a little hard to grasp. But number one is literally always be looking. Years ago, those of you that are in sales know that it was very common if you went to sales trainings, everybody would talk about the ABCs of selling. Well, ABCs stood for always be closing. Well, as time has evolved, we know that in sales, always be listening is much better. So we have a little different version of that ABL today, which again is always be looking. Now, the key is, where are all the people? And are we looking in the right places? Well, one of the most common that most of us at least check out on some fairly consistent basis are the typical job sites. Indeed, Monster.com, Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter are 4 or 5 of the top ones. But again, for what many of you are doing and the services you're providing and the products and the resources you have available to your customers, maybe you find some good fits here and maybe you don't. Okay, it's not as automatic for us as it is for certain other trades. So look for trade-specific job boards and postings for your local distributor partner and other partners locally in your community where you may find better fits for your community than some of the in general job postings. How about this one? Your employees are really your best recruiters because at the end of the day, they really are your company ambassadors. They can be your eyes and ears in the community far beyond what you or just the other leaders on your team are able to see. Think about as they're out and about in the community. Maybe it's another local business. Maybe it's a restaurant or something that they attend locally. And they meet an individual that just is outstanding in customer service. Well, they're there. You may never meet that person. So as they're having these interactions, for most of us, even though we offer a product, a large majority of individuals on this call today are really in the service industry, because unless you are completely product focused, you can have a great product, but if you don't have great service, we know how that goes. So include your team in this very important process, because again, they carry the DNA of your company and they can strategically watch for individuals they come across in just the normal process of life near where you live that could be great additions to your team. Bill mentioned the employee referral incentives. And really, this is twofold. A lot of companies that we have talked to and surveyed leading up to this and articles that we have read, there seems to be a two-pronged approach. One is if they talk to someone that simply comes in and applies for the position. Well, that's step one. But we know that not everybody who gets an interview is going to get a job. So there may be another incentive, and it seems to be that a lot of the most successful companies that are really doing well with this have 6 months as the mark or the goal. If you have someone that you talk to them, they come in for an interview, we hire them as part of the team, and they stay for 6 months, there can be a nice, handsome bonus. I'll give you an example. In our community, we're short on bus drivers for school. So I heard just yesterday that a local school district says if you come and apply or you refer someone, they'll give you $100 if you just refer somebody to come for an interview. If they stay 6 months, they will increase that by another $500. So all kinds of ways to be creative with this to help get people flowing in our direction.
Well, and Patrick, and I'll throw one more in there as well, right? So more and more, we're starting to hear contractors who are, and many of you guys, and we know are already doing the referral piece of the puzzle, but just to share for those who may not be, is that piece where I'll give, if after 6 months, the individual is still there, we'll give you $100 and we'll give the employee $100. Right. So at that point, there's incentive on both ends for them not only to come, but then, to get referrals, but to stay as well.
No doubt. Awesome. Absolutely right. Because we want to make it worth the while for our team to be involved and make sure, again, that they're actively looking as they're just going through their daily routine and living in the community where we hope to draw additional people. Social media. Now, this again is one that's like, well, duh. But again, remember, it's not just your company going through social media channels. Involve your team. Imagine the reach if you have 5 employees or 10 employees or 20, or even if it's just 2 in addition to you, the owner. That is an additional reach if we can coordinate together so that our jobs are made available through the social media post of all of us, not just a single channel. Look at these numbers. 73% of 18 to 34-year-olds found their last job through social media. 59% of recruiters rated candidates that are sourced through social media as very high quality. 83% of job seekers preferred Facebook over some other types of social networking. Now, there are many others. LinkedIn scores very high on this as well. But keep in mind who is on some of these social medias. Yes, owners, managers, team leaders are there, but who else is there? Your team members. I think one of the reasons that the scores are so high in some of these social media outlets, particularly those 2, is because that's where people are spending some of their time. So if they just make available, hey, we have a position, this is what we're looking for, let's talk about it, it tends to have exponential effect in having those good conversations. Right. What about this one? Local colleges or trade schools that are in your area, particularly those in your area of specialty. Just because you graduate from a local trade school or college, it's not automatic that you're going into a position. So how are we reaching out and being proactive for those that are in their junior or senior year? Those that can do internships and already begin to have inroads into the company so that onboarding process, which we'll talk about in just a few moments, actually begins at that entry level. What about job fairs? Now, I have a relative of mine. This was not planned. About an hour before our session today, I got a phone call. Again, a relative of mine was so excited. He said, guess what? I submitted an application last night to a large company here in the area. They responded back this morning that they were a part of a local job fair where several other businesses of various trades were represented. He goes into that and had a very good interview, and I'm proud to say he was hired on the spot. So I asked him, how was the crowd that was there? He said there was a very good attendance of both businesses that are looking for people and candidates who came to have those conversations. So partner with others, or if you don't have some of those in your area, you might partner with other trade partners in your area, and you might even host one and broadcast that to your community. Trade associations and nonprofit partners, don't forget about them. A lot of your nonprofits in a community are filled with people from all kinds of backgrounds and all kinds of trades. If you develop a relationship there to go in and host a job fair or an evening of interest with Q&A, I think you might be surprised at the positive feedback you receive. Job listing site data from multiple sources tell us this employee trend is definitely part of what we're seeing today. Over a third of new hires don't make it a full 2 years in their new role. According to the Bureau of Labor, a generation ago, you would have approximately 6 to maybe 7 jobs in a lifetime. How about today? That trend has certainly changed. And this move, like Bill had mentioned, some of these moves started pre-COVID that we were seeing in the market and certain shifts that are taking place. Today, it can be over 20 jobs by how things have changed. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, okay, guys, what an encouraging start to the day, right?
Right. Oh, this is a hoot. Yeah, this is.
You guys are just full of cheer and excitement. So the question is, what can we do about it? Well, there's a lot of things in this life. And if COVID-19 has taught all of us anything, there's some things we can't control. But you know what? The good news is there's a lot of things that we can control. And that's what we want to begin to focus on as we go through this training. One of the things is in the way that you're putting the job listing out there or your team members are talking about it, make sure that you're able to live up to those recruiting promises. What I mean by that is, did you sell a position or did you describe a position? Now, it's okay if you want to change the company culture. You want to begin to go in a different direction. Absolutely fine, because that's something that happens in the life of every company. But if you're at that critical inflection point, if you will, let your new hire in on that information. If you come on board with us, you'll notice these things are in place now, but here are some new things I want to begin to implement. Here's some new direction that I want us to go. And here's the wonderful thing. You can let that new hire know what their role will be in this critical turn in the culture and the life of your company. So it's best to bring them into that so they get a sense of ownership and excitement about what they will actually find when they show up on their first day. Why does that matter? Top hires often have these complaints. You know, the advertisement or the job posting said this, but when I showed up, the position was very different. The management was very different than what was portrayed. There was no clear process of advancement that was given. So seeing their place in the life and the growth of the company from an early stage at that first conversation really is very important. Bill, what are some ways we can help this the stage of the process to be more effective?
Well, you know, it's kind of interesting, you know, Patrick, and one of the thoughts that I've got on that last comment that you just made is, you know, we all know that as employers, we've hired that or interviewed that individual, right? This guy has been, you know, he's come in, we've had the interview, and your gut's saying, this is the person we need to hire. Finally, they've shown up, right? And you hire them and they show up for work on Monday morning and you're going like, okay, who are you? And what do we do with the guy that we interviewed? Right? Tomorrow, send them. Well, you know what? The opposite is true as well. Because sometimes, based on what Patrick is saying, and he's right, sometimes some employees interview for a position and they're going, this is where I can be home. This is the job that I want to have. And they show up on Monday morning and they're going, okay, who are you guys and what'd you do with the company that I interviewed with? Because this isn't it, right? So Patrick's right. So here's the other thing is we look at this piece of the puzzle and we go, okay, this looks like it's going to be a little harder, right? And I know, right, every one of you would like us to tell you on here that you know, on Friday of next week, the hiring issue, the employee availability issue is going away and the problem will be solved, right? That's all you got to do is X and the problem goes away. Unfortunately, that's not the case. It is absolutely not the case for a couple of different reasons. Number one, our companies have changed. Over the last year and a half, our companies have absolutely changed. Right? The market is different. Along with that, the labor pool has changed. And the way the labor pool feels and what we do has changed. And that's all just pandemic driven. And then you put on top of that the generational thing that has been changing for a long time already anyway, is creating some of those issues. And so we really, you know, that brings us to key, you know, number two is the effective use of some assessment tools. We need to find the right person for the job. You know, the one thing that you're probably already picking up on is this is not it's going to be over tomorrow thing. Right, it's going to take some work on your part to make this happen. It is just you know, it's the reality of the market today across the country. And so, you know, finding that right person for the job, finding the person that has what it takes to be a superior performer in that role. Now, chances are somewhere along the way we've all hired, you know, our third cousin's youngest kid, right? And they come in, they're going to be a technician. We're going to do some training with them, and they just didn't work out. Right. And think about the money and what that cost you. And, you know, sometimes, you know, in fact, I've heard some of you say, look, if you can fog a mirror, you're in. Right. Well, that's not, I mean, again, look at what it's going to cost you to get this individual up to speed. Right. And so, yeah, the assessment tools, if you've never used them before, is something that you really need to take a look at. Right. And running somebody through an assessment, right? Some of you guys are going, yeah, I've done DISC and I've done some of those other things already. Here's the thing. Running somebody through an assessment is good, but it's only part of the picture. When I look at an assessment that says they're really good, right? Well, compared to what? Right? Because if you don't have anything to measure that against, okay, they might look really good, but it might be for a different position. Right. And so we have to be looking at, what is that? So we've created the benchmarks. We're certified in this. We've spent a lot of years in, playing with this piece of the puzzle and working with it and studying it. And we've created benchmarks for several different positions within your companies. So now we have a measuring stick to measure this individual up against. And so when we look at that, what is it measuring? Well, there's really three different areas, right? Now, the first one is behaviors. Right, behaviors is how people do things. Right, so most of you have heard of DISC. You've dealt with DISC. Even if you haven't dealt with it, you at least heard of it in some way, right, shape, or form. Well, DISC is this piece of the puzzle right there. That's DISC. That's it, right? And so DISC is, again, how you do things, how we talk, how we communicate, how detailed are we? What's our truck going to look like? What's our desk going to look like? How are we going to get along with other people? It's the how of our interactions, and that's it. If you're using DISC, that's all you're looking at is that piece of the puzzle, is how we do things. But there's a couple of really important areas. The next one is driving forces. Why do we do things? Right. So when I deal with this individual, I can see what they do on an assessment, and they can be frighteningly accurate if you're using the right tool. Right? So I can look at what they do or how they do it. Right. But why are they doing it? The driving force is the fire in their belly. It's what gets them up in the morning. It's why I go to work each day. It's what fires me up, right? And here's the critical piece, is that driving forces absolutely steer the behaviors. Their driving force, that fire in their belly, will absolutely steer how they do things. And so if we don't even look at that, we're only getting a part of the picture. And that can be a problem. And then underneath that one is their competencies. What have they mastered? Now, we are not talking about wrench turning. We're talking about some of the skills in terms of just doing the jobs. And so often we hear, I just need somebody to be able to service equipment. Well, think about it. As they're servicing equipment, they're dealing with other people, aren't they? Right? And you can have those people. I've hired some of those people that, quite frankly, we brought them in. Technically, they were awesome. And every single time they open their mouth, they tick somebody off. Well, what the good does that do to me or for me, right? And so let me give you an idea what we're talking about here, right? I don't want to be elusive or generic, right? So what I've got is I'm sharing with you some of those key requirements for a service technician, right? So just to give you an idea, the behaviors, how they do things. There's 4 critical traits that they need to have mastered. Number 1, their interaction, right? And so frequent communication, engagement with other people. Every service technician out there has to be engaging with other people, especially your customers. They have to do really well with versatility. In other words, they need to be able to adapt to various situations easily. If they can't switch from one thing to another, it's going to be pretty tough for them to function kind of on their own in the field. The third one is people-oriented, building a rapport with a wide variety of people. In many cases, even regardless of what I think about them or their position in life. And then frequent change, rapid shifts between tasks. They need to be able to move and refocus again relatively quickly. Those are the critical how things that we look at. That's the part of DISC that they need. But now we go into those driving forces, those motivators, why they do the things that they do. And we need people who are motivated, that their driving force, number 1, is structured. And again, this is for a service technician, structured. In other words, within your company, there's a certain way that you do things. Right? We get to the job. We pull up to the house, in front of the house, not in the driveway. We go to the door. We greet the customer, right? Knock on the door, take a step backwards, wait till they answer the door, right? We do things in a certain way. And if we've got somebody who is not structured driven, they're going to have a hard time with that. They're going to buck your trends all the time. We need them to be driven by resourcefulness. In other words, they're driven by practical results, maximizing both efficiency and return on their investment of time, talent, resources. In other words, I'll put in the work, I'll do what needs to be done, but there better be a payout at the end. And it's really looking at what's good for me, what's good for the customer, what's good for this company. I need somebody driven by objectiveness. They're driven by the functionality and objectivity of the surroundings. Right. Yeah. And so I need to be able to get those things done. And then collaborative, working with other people. Right. I need to be able to like and feel good about that. Now, If you hire an individual as a service technician and they're not driven by these 4 items, I'm not saying they won't do it. I'm saying that what'll end up happening is they're going to go home at the end of the day and go, man, this job sucks. It's just boring. There's nothing here for me, right? I'm going to go find something that really fires me up, right? And that's where this stuff comes in, why it's so important. And then we look at the what, right? What do they have the ability to do? What have they mastered? Right. And so it's really, there's 7 of these, right? So customer focus, personal accountability, quite frankly, for any key role, a measure of the capacity to be answerable for their personal actions. If they don't score high here, that's a major red flag for me, right? Diplomacy, teamwork, right? I want those things, problem solving, continuous learning, and resiliency. Now, you look at those, the what items, those competencies, if I have time, I can teach those. When you look at the behaviors, I can make you aware of a behavior and you can adapt, but you can't live in that adapting world. And then you get into driving forces, you can't change those. They are what they are. So here's the thing. If I hire somebody, especially somebody who I'm going to put a lot of time and energy and love and money into them over the next couple of years to grow my own super tech, they better have what it takes to make it happen. Because if they don't match at least 10 out of these 15 areas that I just laid out to you here, it doesn't matter how much time, energy, love, or money you put in. They will never be a superior performer in this role. So if you're bringing people in to grow your own, make sure they have the foundational stuff. Now, ultimately, we'll compare those back to we compare those back to the benchmark, right? So here's the competencies, the driving forces, the behaviors, and we basically give you a nice color-coded, right? Blues and greens are good. Yellows and reds are bad, right? So they need to match either good or exact with at least 10 out of these 15. And in this particular case, this would be a service technician I would grab just like that, right? Because again, they don't come along all that often. But if they don't have this stuff, you can't force it into them. They either have it or they don't. So if I'm going to teach somebody, I want to be working with somebody who has what it takes. Right. So we find out that this guy has what it takes. Right. We talked about not overselling the position. Right. We want to basically demonstrate the position. What is it? We want to be realistic and we want to be able to deliver on what we're selling. So we want to run up with this stuff. Yeah. Okay. We think this guy's got what it takes. How do we get him up to speed? And so, Patrick, what would you say at that point? Right. And along with that, again, if you've got any questions or anything like that, by all means, throw that in the question box. We will we'll address those as we can. So, Patrick, how do we get these guys up to speed?
Bill, that's a perfect segue. We just had a question that came in, and usually if one is asking this, others are thinking it. Just was trying to take notes on those slides with that lot of information. So just a reminder about the link that will go out post facto. On this one. So if you're going through there and you miss something, no worries. You'll have opportunities to be able to review this, post facto. So yeah, so good.
Yeah, it is absolutely being recorded, and the link will be available to you even afterwards. Absolutely.
Awesome. Very good. So key number 3, piggybacking on, we're kind of building layer upon labor, no pun intended, layer on labor, right? Layer upon layer as we're going through. Is a clear onboarding process. Now, there's one thing that we hear probably more than any other comment from employers throughout the country in various trades, and I understand the sentiment. Let me qualify that. I understand where we're coming from sometimes when we hear these words. Man, I tell you today, employees is just like everybody you meet is so entitled, just such an entitled generation. I don't know how to deal with these folks. Well, the reality is a little bit more elusive. Okay. In reality, more than being an entitled generation, we're battling disengagement sometimes at all-time highs. Disengaged employees, from studies we have looked at, end up being about 2/3 of the workforce. Around 32% of full-time active employees are fully engaged. Well, if 1/3 of them are fully engaged, where does that leave the other 2/3? Some areas that we can work to make better. In particular, with new hires coming on board, Many of them felt abandoned after joining the team. Okay, we're here. Now what? Years ago, I personally experienced this. I went on board with actually a very well-known, renowned company, and I was so excited. Well, the person that did my interviewing, by the time I showed up, they were gone on a 2-week vacation. So for about 2.5 weeks, I just sat around the office and read brochures, and whoever had time to talk to me, they would give me a few pointers, but it was very sporadic. And to be honest with you, it was very awkward. So that was not really a great start. And when they came back, guess what? After you're gone for 2 weeks, it doesn't have to be 2 weeks. You're gone for 2 days. What does your email look like? Right? What's the line outside your door? So there was another week of recovery when they came back. I had been there close to a month before I really got my wheels turning with any kind of designated process. And that was incredibly frustrating, but it's also more common than you might think. So with that, it's never been more important to have a clear onboarding process. How much time do you have when a new team member comes on board to really get the process rolling effectively? Well, about 30% of new hires make up their mind if they're going to stay with your company in the first 2 weeks. The other, up to about 50%, have made up their mind within the first month. So you can take a pretty good guess about where old Patrick's mindset was 4 weeks into the job I just described, when it had been a hot mess. Okay, not a good experience. And again, this was a good company. Okay, this was an accomplished company, but they didn't have this part of the puzzle ironed out really well at all. Communicating the vision and clear pathway to grow in the organization has never been more important early in the process. Always remember this. What are people really looking for? People need a job, yes. They want to be part of something with purpose. Doing work that matters is a much more top of mind expression than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. So how can we define this further? It's really rooted in a strong why you do what you do. Now, Simon Sinek is very popular for this. He has great resources. Find your why, start with why. He works with countless organizations. So in identifying the why that we have to bring new hires into really early in the process, here's an example from Apple that he walks through. Apple, what is your why? We exist to challenge the status quo about technology we use every day to make life easier. Well, they do that really well. What is your how? We make products that are beautifully designed, simple to use for work and play. Okay. What is your what? Well, by the way, we make phones and computers and tablets and a variety of things. Again, they have a very strategic process. And for you and I, with a company of any size, in any trade, that is a bigger deal now to new people who show up to be a part of your team. So what is your why? Here's an HVAC example that we could walk through. Contractor Magazine conducted a study, and they determined that 80% of those that were studied saw no difference from one trades company to the other, except for price. That is not a good recipe for any of us on the call today, right? To succeed, that has to change. So what if this became our why, if we were all at a company together? We exist to challenge the status quo of customer experiences related to the trades industries. Okay? How are you going to do that? Our team of happy, positive people make decisions every day with our clients in mind to make doing business with our company simple and easy. Now, let me show you the strategy in this brief little statement, happy and positive. How many of you would prefer happy and positive people? Yes, it's better than grumpy and irritable any day of the week, right? So let's put that out there as we're talking to who are we looking for? Yes, we need skills, but we can help you with that. We have some areas that we can help to train you, but we want a happy and a positive environment. It speaks to your culture. Simple and easy. Notice that we want to make it simple and easy to do business with our company, and you become a strategic part of that when you join our team. That speaks to our process. Both of these are very important because both of these impact your customers in a direct way. So what would be our what if we're following this progression? We offer a full complement of products to make your home healthy and comfortable. And if we're talking about HVAC, here's what we actually do. We're experts at conditioning the air. We heat it, we cool it, we clean it, we add moisture, we remove moisture, we bring in fresh air, we take out stale air, all with one goal: to make you comfortable. You get the idea. Having a clear what really invites your team members into a journey. The daily 3 for leaders would be as follows. Number 1, daily, invite your team into the journey into your why. And that'll be unique and different for every single person that's here, but it's super important in defining work that matters. Number 2, daily, explain the importance of achieving the why as an organization. And number 3, show every team member their personal role in making that happen. That takes something that can be very broad-based and it makes it personal, and it really raises the level of commitment from every team member.
And so, Patrick, on that one, let me just ask, I mean, quite frankly, for anybody, right? I mean, think about you and your role, right? If you don't understand the why, what is your why? It makes whatever you're doing a lot more difficult, more drudgery, more, I mean, right? I mean, we have to have a purpose, right? And so, every person in your company already has a purpose. Really, would you agree, Patrick, that explaining the why invites them into the purpose of the company, right? And if they don't understand that, they have no purpose. It's just another job.
Absolutely. It's foundational. It's foundational. In fact, another real easy example, my kids have worked in food service for a while. It's a great place to earn your stripes. I will say that, okay? The particular place they happen to work does a very good job at sharing their why. Now, their catchphrase, you'll probably figure out who this is. Their catchphrase is, when they respond back to a customer, is "my pleasure. Thank you so much." I've been to other places who used a similar phrase, and they only taught the employees to say it. They didn't teach the why. And how do I know that? Because there are 2 different ways you can say "my pleasure." You can say "my pleasure. Thank you so much for coming." Or you can say "pleasure." But the last one was just a phrase. It had no passion behind it. So more than just what we're teaching them and going through the motions, the why absolutely becomes a foundation that really shapes the way that we serve our customers well. Key number 4, pathway to advancement. I love this quote here by the one and only Zig Ziglar. The only thing worse than training employees is, or the only thing worse than training employees and losing them is not training them and keeping them. If you've ever walked that path, you know that no truer words have ever been spoken than those right there. So among the top concerns of new hires, and I will tell you, especially the younger workers, and who am I talking about? Millennials and Gen Zers, or they're often referred to as the I generation, okay? So that younger core that, by the way, they are in the workplace. They're not coming. They are in the workforce as we speak. One huge thing on their radar that is a core value is the ability to see a clear pathway to advance in the company from early in the process. Now, employers, and perhaps some of you, when you hear this line, it's easy to respond, well, I'm not going to tell you the pathway from the front door to the mansion on your first day on the job. I mean, for goodness sakes, you just got here, right? You don't have the skills to do that yet. I get that. But somewhere between this line of sentences and this sentiment, we have to build a bridge. What can we do to help both of these statements work together? Consider this. 60% of employers can't find applicants with the perfect skill blend that they're looking for. 30% of job seekers say that their skill set was not an exact match for some jobs that would be of interest. One thing that we need to go ahead and take some pressure off everybody on this call is the perfect employee is really a myth. The myth that you find somebody tailor-made, already fixed, worked out, trained, ready to go, Does that happen? Yes, that can happen occasionally, but I'm going to tell you by far and away that rarely happens anymore. The best employees, hands down, across trades that we work with all across the nation are the result of a great process that you strategically and intentionally put in place. This is important because we really can't hold employees accountable until they're properly trained with the tools necessary to do the job. So as you're going through these stages of development and a new hire comes on board, have a clear strategic 30-day goal. And this is more, by the way, than reading the digital copy, the copy of the manual and going through the steps in HR and completing all of the paperwork and learning about the general principles of the company. All that's part of it, yes. But you want to go beyond that. What needs to happen in that first 30 days that is strategic? What happens in 60 days and 90 days and 6 months and so on? A very common approach is team training. Get your team involved because remember, if we're really doing this correctly, our team is heavily involved in recruiting these new community members to become part of the company. So training as a team approach works great if you follow WWDWW. And you're thinking, what on earth is that? It stands for who will do what when. Let me say it again. Who will do what when? That simple phrase will revolutionize not only your training strategy, but frankly, any meeting you ever attend should not end until you define who should do what when. Mm-hmm. Two things have to be clarified here. The responsibility of the team member who's doing the training. What do they need to be sharing? What strategic discussions do they need to be having? So, because if we don't do that, then when the employee goes from one team member to the next team member, they could easily end up overlapping or omitting critical information if we're not strategic with that process. But in addition, the person being trained needs to know what their responsibilities are as well. Years ago, I was a comfort consultant. A new employee came on board in the sales department, and I got them a third week they were there. They had already been with 2 other comfort consultants for the previous 2 weeks. First thing I noticed when we got to the first call, there was no pen, no piece of paper. They weren't taking notes on their phone, weren't taking pictures of the job. When we came out, they were just on cruise. And so I asked them, I said, so in your previous 2 weeks, have you taken notes? Have you had strategic discussions? And they said, no, but we sure had a good time. Well, that's great. I'm glad you guys hit it off. That's wonderful. Let me be clear. This week, we're going to review every call, every conversation, every system we look at, and I expect you to be ready to do so at the end of every call we see today. That little shift, simple as it was, you can imagine at the end of that week was the first week this particular person really felt they started to wrap their arms around the position. That wasn't because of Patrick. That was because the process became strategic versus generic. So you want to get and give feedback through every strategic stage. So key questions to ask. Do you feel the company is meeting your expectations? Are you experiencing any difficulties? Because again, they're new. They don't want to make waves. They may not just bring it up. So let's give them a chance to do so in a safe environment. Do you like the tools and the resources? Do you feel like you have the tools and resources that you need at this stage? Have you outlined strategic goals with your supervisor or team leader? Do you feel you're making progress toward these goals? 4 commitments from the employer to the new hire goes like this. You will work to develop them as people in alignment with your company goals. That starts with your why. You will give them resources they need to do their job effectively. You'll provide them with transparent and frequent communication. I cannot overemphasize how much of a big deal that one is. And you'll hold them accountable for clearly defined performance standards. So, Bill, as we're going through our layers of our cake, what is the next steps we need to kind of build on this process?
Well, so we get these guys on board, right? We get them in-house, and quite frankly, that those 4 commitments. In fact, Patrick, if you want to throw those back on your screen for a second, right? If anybody wants to grab a screenshot of that one, go for it. Again, that way you've got, because those 4 things can make or break that interaction with the new hire every time. Now, not only do we just ask the questions, you got to deliver on them. Right. And so, we got to give the tools to the individuals that are there. So, where do we go from here? That key number 5, number 5 is continuous training. We can't just bring them in and say, okay, we've got 2 weeks worth of training, right? You're going to go ride with Joe for a couple of weeks, right? In reality, that's code for you're going to be a runner, right? So whatever, so again, we need to be training them. But then once we get past that initial period, it's critical that you need to continue to provide ongoing training. Now, I mentioned way back at the beginning of this thing that a lot of companies, I think it was 42%, are starting to either upskill or reskill their employees. And what we mean by that is training, giving more training to the people that we already have. And the benefit there is, quite frankly, they already know the culture of your company. They know how you do things. They know what you do, that kind of thing. And so let's build and invest into the people that we already have. And so if that is that person who's been there for a month or 2 months, great. If it's somebody who's been there for a year, let's give them more training to make them more valuable and productive in the company. Getting new employees up to speed, we've got to do that quickly. And so that's where I will go back to, what Patrick said on number 4 is, again, what should happen within 30 days, within 60 days, within 90 days? What do you need to be able to demonstrate to us that you now have proficiency in that area? And, oh, by the way, as Patrick said, the person they're riding with can't go into it with a mindset of, hey, I got a parts runner, right? They need to be teaching. They need to be aware of these competencies that we need to be training and getting up to speed. And so, again, because it all comes down to this, right? Your people are your most important asset that you have in your company. You can have the best product or service in the world, but if you don't have people on your team that can deliver it, it's all for naught. Right? So we have to be investing in more today than ever before in some of this soft side of the puzzle and getting them up. Now, again, most companies do provide a little bit of initial training for new hires, right? But quite frankly, failure to provide continuous training for our team, ongoing, even after they've been there for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, right? And more, it ultimately results in much higher turnover rates, which only exacerbates this problem, right? You end up losing your competitive edge because, quite frankly, even if your company was the best in your market 5 years ago, and you are still doing things the exact same way today, quite frankly, you're probably eating somebody else's dust because they are always trying to get better. And you as a company need to continue to improve what you're doing. And so we need to be getting our team continuous training. Odds are you've got missed opportunities. You missed the opportunity to capitalize on some of the latest processes and technologies and things that are out there that you can do a little bit better. Right? Again, within our company, everybody here knows the words you do not utter is, we've always done it that way. Don't want to hear it? I don't, right? Because that, again, how we've done it doesn't matter. The market is always moving. You need to be moving and growing along with it. Now, there's some huge, huge benefits to your company and to the individual team members to providing this ongoing training. Number one, it mitigates your weaknesses. I mean, it helps employees hone in their knowledge and their skills and get sharper. We need them to continue to grow. It helps minimize weak points. Right? Everybody has an area that's a weak point. I don't care if they've been with you 3 days or 30 years, they've got weak points. And so when we talk about this continuous training, again, we're not simply talking purely technical. It's what else, in the company, right? Some of it's soft skills, some of it's business skills, some of it's, right? There's a lot of areas in your company. Much better, improved job fulfillment, right? People who have continuous training feel valued. You as a company are willing to invest in them. They will be much more engaged, and they're going to be much more loyal to your company. Right? It increases employee performance, right? And this in itself can give you that advantage over some of the competition that's in the market. Getting that professional development, right, for our team, right? Again, creates an environment of competent, highly skilled individuals that can really move forward. And as a company, for some of you, you may not want to hear this, but you have to embrace technology. Right? Remember, millennials, Gen Zers, were born embracing technology. My daughter is 31 years old. She has never known life without cell phones, ever. Because I had my first cell phone before she was born. Right? And again, when you start getting into certainly Gen Zers, they've never known life without smartphones in a lot of cases, right? Because they grew up with that technology, right? And without it, if you're not doing that, it may be far more difficult to attract some of that young talent that we need within our company. And keep in mind, you start getting into a lot of those generations, that Gen Z, right? The millennials, they start dragging the older generations into the technology. Right? I mean, think about it, right? If you use a tablet, if you use so many of these individuals, right? That's the way they communicate. And so that can be a bit of a challenge. We need to embrace this within our companies. Think about it. I mean, even some of the equipment that's out there today, right? Your technicians can literally stand next to the equipment with their smartphone, communicate via Bluetooth, and troubleshoot it and set it up and do everything they need to using nothing but a smartphone. Right? It's we have to be jumping into this piece of the puzzle, and it also provides new opportunities. It provides new opportunities for better job satisfaction and morale. It's been proven, Salisbury University study has proven that, again, if new team members have positive experiences with training within your company, that will result in positive attitudes about receiving more training. Right? A lot of times, they hate training because we make training a drudgery. Right? And so, again, it absolutely correlates to positive feelings about what they do. And you can say, well, look, I'm giving them a job. They work. I'm going to give them a paycheck. They should feel good about that. Unfortunately, that isn't cutting it anymore. They're a different generation today, right? 86% of people feel more, not only better about their job, but they feel far more capable and more confident in what they do day in and day out if they receive that training. And then the end result of that is less anxiety, less frustration. Well, we've just covered a whole bunch of stuff here, Patrick. Right now, a part of that also comes back, and we've been focusing on hiring, but a lot of these, especially these later ones, deal with retention as well, don't they?
No doubt.
Right? Yeah, it gives us the ability to retain some of our best talent. That introduction training is only a foundation, and you have to look at your company as it's truly only a foundation, and that's really what we're looking at. There are always gaps. We always need to be training and trying to fill and train out those gaps to make our team a little bit better. And remember, Patrick shared with you a little bit earlier that need for continued advancement, right? They want to be able to see that path to continue to grow. Do you have that laid out for them? That's critical for today's generation. It's to be looking at that part of the puzzle. And so, as we come to the end of our time, we are pleased to announce that, again, to help you with these tools, we have heard this struggle over and over and over again. And so, how do we find those good people? Well, again, that killer service tech is not out there, right, that you can hire. Chances are, if they're a killer service tech, they're already on somebody else's payroll who are being taken care of well. And so we've come up with our Contractor Academy and basically made training available to your team on your terms, right? It makes it easy, makes it cost effective and a great way to get it. And so we've created our Contractor Academy. You can go out to our website, literally on any of the page, click on Get Access, the orange Get Access button. And what we've done is we have made every one of our self-paced training programs available for as low as $29 a month. $29 a month, you can have access to every single self-paced training program we've got in our library. And so you go in there, you're automatically enrolled. You can take the individual program itself. We've got 3 different levels, right? Level 2 says not only will you get every single self-paced program, but we've heard contractors tell us over and over, look, Bill, love the self-paced stuff. It's good. But man, what about that instructor-led online course, right? That HVAC onboarding that Patrick teaches, or the plumbing onboarding that Bill teaches, or the culture class, or the service managers university that's live, right? Taught by us. Can we get into those as a part of this? Level 2 will give you all the self-paced plus 25% off of any of those programs, the instructor-led programs. And then level 3 also adds into that our new Planning for Profit online pricing tool that we have as well. And so we go into any one of these, right? And we can gain access to it. When we log in, right now today, you look at, this is just some of the programs that are out there. Today, there's more than 50 hours of training. If you were to sit through every one of these little badges here, when you go inside, there's either one or as many as 15 different lessons that apply to that particular course. And we're adding more every day. In fact, there was one more added today. There's another, I think, 8 going in next week. And so, again, we're continuing to add content inside of here. You can sign up an individual. So if you want to go through it yourself, again, as little as $29 a month, you simply hit the Get Access and you click on Register My Account. If you want to register your team, you can go in and actually have group access here. So you can register up to 15 people at one time. You get their account. As the admin for your account, you can see which programs they've taken, what kind of progress they've got. Are they passing them? Many of the programs, there's actually a quiz at the end of it. And so we find out they need to pass, score 80% or better on that quiz at the end of that session in order to make sure that they're getting the knowledge. Right. So we look at those couple of items. Again, any page on there itself, just simply click on Get Access, little as $29 a month. You can have access by 3:05. I mean, it's that quick. You go in, you can register, and you can be online immediately. So with that, I know we've answered a couple of questions as we've gone through our time here to get today. Hopefully we found that you were able to pick up a couple of nuggets here. We would love to tell you, hey, next week it's over. Right? There'll be plenty of people to fill all the open roles you have with the skills that you want or need. Reality says it's not the case. Right? And so you need to be training your team. You need to be looking for those people. Right? So always be keeping your eye open for this piece of the puzzle and moving forward. Patrick, any last thoughts that you have as we come to the end of our time?
Hey guys, we appreciate you so much. And moving forward, because it's a journey, don't go it alone. Okay. Even locally, find other business owners. You'll find that they're facing the same struggles that you are. It can be a great help to you just to have that community that really you can help each other to learn and grow. And all of us here with our Grandy team, we're here to resource you, to help you. We truly are passionate about what we do. And all of our team members have been in the trenches where you are. So we can speak your language, and anything we can do to help you, it's our pleasure to do so.
Absolutely. No question. Hey, good one. And I should also mention here, because I see the question just popped in on my side, is what about the, is there a time frame on this thing? No. You can go out there. You can, after a month, if you want to hit pause or stop it, you hit pause or stop it. No problem. If you want to continue going, again, it'll just charge on a regular basis. But you use it. There's no particular time frames. If I register a team and I've got 5 guys who are all going through programs and I want to pull one out and now put the next one in, not a problem. You control the 5 people who have access to the program itself. So easy enough. Again, 50 hours worth of training you can attend on your time. With that, guys, we are at the top of the hour. We appreciate your taking time to be in here. We appreciate your questions, your comments that have come through. With that, stay safe. God bless.